workers, about a fifth of the nation's population and a large part of the national economy. During the preceding 2 years, a succession of big financial institutions had teetered or collapsed. Their top executives, typically the most confident of men, spent long weekends begging competitors in the Fed to save them during fraught rescue negotiations as frightened investors and depositors in their institutions fled for safety from the storm. The list of casualties was long, diverse, and astonishing. Countrywide Financial, Bear Stearns, Fannie Mae, Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, American International Group, AIG, Citigroup, General Electric, and many others. Their problem was a mortgage meltdown. Americans had binged on mortgage debt in an era of low interest rates and financial innovation. They took out loans with unusual terms and used the cash to bid up the prices of homes, to pay for vacations and cars, or simply to cover their regular bills. Wall Street encouraged the frenzy, buying many of these mortgages and selling them to investors around the world in complicated financial packages. For a while, this boosted profits and executive pay. Then, overburdened households delayed or defaulted on debts. When mortgage delinquencies piled up, the financial system was starved of funds and nearly collapsed. Some of the most aggressive mortgage writing happened in the West, which Yellen was monitoring. That meant she saw problems brewing early, though not early enough nor with the authority and a diffuse regulatory system to stop it. As mortgages went bad, lenders panicked for funds, which in turn set off a frenzy inside the Fed to stop a potentially catastrophic crisis. The Fed's healing medicine was money. It provided loans to banks when funds were nowhere else to be found. It tried to work in an orderly manner. In this case, it administered its medicine as slews of patients crashed at its doors, convulsing and near death. Yellen foresaw the panic before many of her colleagues at the Fed and urged them to move swiftly to stamp it out. The Fed's responses prevented a financial collapse, but the nation was still left with something terrible. After 2 years of exhausting bank rescues, a recession had cascaded out of the canyons of Wall Street to communities across America, leaving more than 15 million people unemployed. In December 2009, Yellen didn't think jobs would be coming back anytime soon. As she saw it, this was the next crisis. It all seemed so unfair. Wall Street got bailouts, and for good reason. The crisis revealed that the economy couldn't work if banks stopped making loans. But while the banks got support, millions of Americans were left behind to pick up the pieces of their lives with part-time jobs, food stamps, and disability claims. 2 Princeton professors would later use the term deaths of despair to describe lives lost to depression, drug addiction, alcoholism, and suicide. A long-running trend that further signaled a nation where elites and everyone else were on 2 different tracks. After landing in Washington, D.C. that December evening, Yellen gathered with the 11 other regional bank presidents for an informal dinner in a hotel a few blocks from the Fed's austere Depression-era building on Constitution Avenue. The next day, the regional bank presidents met formally with 5 Washington-based Fed board governors and an army of PhD-trained staff to discuss the grim economic outlook and what to do about it. Technically, economic output was growing again, which meant a recovery had started, yet the unemployment rate had recently risen to 10%. They sat in a cavernous boardroom with 2-story-high ceilings, its tall windows decorated with elegant light drapes. Above the large mahogany table at its center hung a dark, pointed chandelier that hovered above their heads like the tip of a missile that had crashed through the building, poised to detonate. Yellen, who stood around 5 feet tall, wore modest dark pantsuits to meetings, sometimes dressed up with a silk scarf. Ben Bernanke, an introverted and socially awkward genius who had written books on the Great Depression, conducted the proceedings as the Fed's chairman. As a young academic, Bernanke had concluded that the Fed's hesitation to act had made the Great Depression much worse than it needed to be. He was a quiet man with bold views.